Alrighty, hello everyone, thanks for joining again. If you weren't here earlier, my name is Brody and I'm here to discuss about protecting company data. Now, what you might be thinking is that, well, all the things that we've been speaking about today are in relation to protecting company data. Protecting user accounts with that part covered earlier is to ensure that malicious actors aren't getting through to user accounts to access their documents. Bilal spoke about Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection, so protecting from incoming malware and incoming agents to access this data. But what we're going to be speaking about now is how to place security on the documents themselves. So a large purpose of this is to ensure or to continue to enforce the zero trust policy and zero trust strategy that Microsoft's employing across the board. As we spoke about earlier, that includes assuming that there is a breach somewhere else in the system or assuming that the systems aren't infallible. Now, the strength of this comes from applying security to the documents themselves by assigning labels, by using data loss prevention strategies, by using classification in general to ensure that information is accessed only by those that need it, and to prevent either intentional or intentionally malicious or negligible users from leaking this data outwards. So, coming here, we've got a couple of statistics from a few studies here. So, out of a study of about 800 companies in Australia that admitted to a breach, 32% of them admitted that the breach were due to human error. Of that 32%, 42.5% were reported as email leaks as accidental. It's continuing to enforce that a large portion of these issues that are happening in businesses are just negligible. They're unavoidable. It's not always attackers looking to get access to your data. Sometimes it's just someone from marketing that forgot to take them off the CC list. Another study which took into account a lot of different organizations that across the board, not just ones that had admitted to breaches, found that there was roughly only 5% of folders that were protected, be they with role-based access control, with encryption, or some further amount of protection being placed on them. Now, we know it's not always possible to continue to apply VeriCrypt to all your drives and ensure that they're always offline and only access the data whilst you're on an offline computer. But the idea is to get an understanding of the information in your organization, how it's being secured and how it's being accessed. That brings us back to the zero trust principles. So assuming that there's a breach somewhere in your organization, assuming that it's not impossible for a user to get in and for a user to access the information. Okay, so coming up here is just a quick overview of what we're going to continue talking about in this segment. So first of all, data loss prevention and how you can apply it to your organization. In a quick overview, as I'll go into it a little bit deeper shortly, data loss prevention allows you to specify specific data types, such as financial information, passport, any other manner of preset identifiers. It allows you to set the locations to search for them, the users that you should be targeting, as well as the actions that should be taken upon them once that data is found. So this acts as a sort of automatic scan across the documents to prevent you from sending them outside. For example, through emails, if it's set up properly in Exchange, it can prevent an email containing credit card information from being sent to an external party or from being sent at all. Moving on to sensitivity labels, this is more of a manual application. So this requires a fair amount of user buy-in. But what this allows you to do is to assign labels and classifications and categories even to the information that you make use of. The reason you'd want to do this can be many different things. You may want to separate them into the departments or the teams that you have at your organization just to simply label them and understand where it should be. You may want to force and lock them down to make sure that they can't be sent anywhere if it's a highly confidential or intellectual property. You may just want to put them in place so that you can understand the usage of these documents in your organization. Finally, we'll go through a bit of why classifying data at all if you've got nothing intentionally or nothing over the top in terms of sensitivity. There's still a lot of benefits to classifying and categorizing the data, even if there's not a huge amount of information that you necessarily need to lock down, like Fort Knox. But we'll go through that a little bit later. So first up is data loss prevention. So, as I said before, it's more of an automatic process. Once you set up the policies, they continue to scan through your organizations in the location that you've specified. It targets the users that you're looking to action, or rather, sorry, we'll go through the process here. So you specify where in the organization are you looking to find this data. Now there's 4 main points, which we brought up before, being OneDrive, SharePoint sites, Exchange mail, and from Teams chat messages. So it allows you to set specific policies to look for specific data in specific areas. Next, what is it? So this allows you to define what information are you looking for. Now we'll go through in a moment of actually creating one of these policies so you can see, but there's a large amount of preset number types and data types that are unique to specific data. Say for example, passport IDs, credit card information, financial or health records, depending on what information is most valuable to your organization, depending what protection you need to make sure you're still compliant with the necessary standards, depending on what information you deal with generally. This allows you to automatically scan through your tenant and prevent any of this from being sent out, or if it is, allow you to take action on that. So that brings us to the next point. What action is required? May just be that it sends a notification to your IT or compliance officers to make sure that they're aware that someone from marketing is sending out a clearly confidential document, or someone from HR is leaking through everyone's birth dates. It depends what you want to do. It can be very lax and simply just notify the users that, hey, we've detected this bit of data, probably setting that outside, or it can be as severe as preventing them from sending out, notifying the admin officers so that they can write them up for that. Though, depending where in compliance your organization sits will depend on what action you want to take. We recommend at the start, if you are implementing these, try to keep it a little bit lax, as it's a fair amount of user change to consider it's a fair amount of user change that prevents them from doing their job, could be taken a little bit hostile. Finally, who does it apply to? So if you want to set this organization-wide, if you want to target specific individuals, if you just want to target the managing director and make sure he's not sharing himself, then you can do that. Depending who you're wanting to look at and who you're wanting to make sure is protected and not sending out these documents. If you know for a fact that only your HR team has access to these sensitive documents, it's probably not worthwhile looking at your level 1 support. But this can all be customized as you see fit. So next we'll go through a quick demo just showing how simple or how in-depth DLP policy can be to create and how much customization there is for that specific. Okay, so similar to the attack simulator, this one's also run from the Office 365 Security and Compliance Center. We can go through data loss policy, data loss prevention and into policy. Could you pause it there for me? Thanks. So as we can see here is the home page for it. We can see a couple of default ones which are set up. One of them's in the process of deleting, but we'll just ignore that for the time being. The important thing is the 2 basic ones, or the 3 basic ones that are in there at the moment. We can see the order of which they're applied, and that relates to the order of precedence the action is applied. So again, going into data loss prevention and security compliance center and into policy. We'll continue going for a moment, but you can see at the top there the quick report on the matches. So if we can pause it there for a moment, please. Thanks. So as we said before, this is the creation of the policy at first. There's a lot of templates in there. As you can see, the most common ones being either privacy, financial, or health records. We'll go through one of the default Australian financial data soon, but it allows you to set a custom policy as well, looking for specific information. So if we can continue there, please. Cool. We can see all the other ones. So in this case, we're only going to be bothering with Australian financial data. However, if your organization operates internationally, it may be worthwhile assisting some of these. We can skip over this one a little bit, but it basically allows you to name and describe the policy that you're setting up. Pretty basic. In this case, we'll focus on Australian financial data that's being shared externally. Yeah, so in there you may want to add some extra details about who exactly created the policy and whatnot. Moving on though, the choose locations part. Are we able to pause here, please? Thanks. So as we said before, the 4 main areas that this targets are all Microsoft 365 services. So if you want to look at Exchange Mail, you can select all users in your organization. You can choose specific individuals that you want to punish. You can choose specific individuals that you want to exclude because they're going to punish you if they can't send out their documents, but basically allowing you to specify which Exchange mailboxes you want this policy to apply to. Same with SharePoint sites, you're able to choose which ones to apply to, which ones to exclude, OneDrive accounts to keep in the loop, and Teams chat as well. Now this is the newest feature in Teams chat, but it will allow you to monitor Teams chat in in real time and understand which users are sending things out and block them from doing so. Now we don't have it here, but it will send out a little message in their own Teams client saying a disclaimer about the information they're trying to send and preventing them from doing so, and perhaps a message to contact their IT staff. So if we can continue on to the next, we'll go through and into the policy settings. So we've got two options here. One is the automatic and basic configuration that uses the details of the setup, or we've got the advanced. So we'll go in here and take a look at the through of the advanced. So just quickly, you can see the two different policies there. If we could pause here for a moment as well. Thanks. Just a moment ago, you can see the two different frequencies of policies that will apply. So if the detection of a content is high in volume, or if it's low in volume, you may want to handle them differently. If someone's only sharing one passport information, though that is bad, it's probably not going to be taken at the same level of severity if someone's leaking the entire company payroll details. Coming into here though, we can see a bit more of the advanced features and how you can set up the policy to target exactly what you're looking to target. So from the content it contains, we're looking for 4 specific data types as it was predetermined, but what we can do is continue to add different data types if we wish. Along the instance count is how many times does it have to occur before we want to apply this action, and the certainty. This is a factor that Microsoft calculates on how certain they are that this information is actually legitimate and should be of worry. For example, if you just type in 1, 2, 3, 4 many times, it's probably not going to take that valid number for most things. And if you try that, it will actually happen. So if you are testing these, make sure that the numbers that you're using aren't legitimate, but also aren't fake. There's a bit of middle ground there. Can we continue on, please? Perfect. And I get you to stop there, please. So first of all, the exceptions. There's always going to be some. So depending on which ones are important for your organization, move over here. Aha, that's better. Depending on your organization, the exceptions to the rule, they're always going to exist, but they're going to be specific to the scenario that you're trying to target. So here's where you'd specify that. The actions to take can range from encrypting the email if it's sending through Exchange. And what this does is, rather than sending the content visible in the email link, once they receive it, they'll receive a link to another Microsoft site where they'll have to sign in with the user that you specified in your email to access it. So they won't be able to get that document until they've signed in with a password and passed any other tests that may be in place for them. Say, for example, the conditional access and identity protection tests that Bart spoke about earlier. After that, the user notifications. So if you want to be kind, you can let your users know that they're breaking the rules and softly slap their hand a little bit. Or you can be a bit more severe, and you can send these notifications to the IT administrators, you can send them to security admins, or even the CEO. Depending where you want to lie and depending where you are at your level of implementation of DLP will depend on what actions you want, or rather what notifications you want to send out. Can we continue on, please? So we'll go through here, restrict access or encrypt the content, as I said before, preventing them from seeing it in plain text in the email. Now, in this case, we'll send that through. User overrides as well is probably worthwhile turning on, especially if you're still implementing and rolling things out. Continuing on, the incident reports, so how you can use this information back as a compliance or administrator to understand the info that's going through. Now just a quick overview of the high volume and how that differs from the low volume. Again, you can adjust these accordingly. Finally, if you could pause here quickly. Thanks. So this just is a pretty important slide, especially if you're still early in your journey of protecting company data, which allows you to either turn it on straight away and punish the users, whether you want to allow them to override and just give them a notification and slowly train them. So this is important because you don't want to be turning things on and moving things too quickly. If it's something severe that users just want to get through, it's not going to be effective. You want to make sure that users understand the reasoning behind it and understand the importance of classifying their data. You want to make sure that the usage that you're getting back out is valuable. If users are just clicking whatever they can to get through and get their job done, it's probably not going to be the most worthwhile information. That's why this classification of data does require a fair bit of user introduction and onboarding, so to speak. We can continue on, please. we're going to be mean here and just turn it on right away. Finally, a quick overview just to review the settings and just make sure you haven't made any mistakes. So we'll go ahead and create the policy. Perfect. And there it is. Now, if we could pause there for a moment, I think that's close to the end, but we can see it's been created. Now, it is going to take some time for that policy to be replicated in the locations you specified. Say, for example, for it to replicate to Exchange, to go through to SharePoint and begin scanning that information. So you may want to wait a day or so before the results start coming in. It's also worth noting that it's not going to scan any historical Exchange data. It's only going to look at new messages being sent by users that are targeted by a DLP policy from here on out. So keep that in mind if you're looking to catch someone from 4 months ago for them sending a document. Probably not going to go well. Why this matters is you can use sensitivity labels to continue to target your departments or your teams. Now, we've got a couple at the bottom there, which we'll get to in a moment, but you may want to create labels that allow you to target the specific teams or departments that are in your organization. So sensitivity labels allow users to manually apply labels to the documents they're doing, but to an extent, it also allows automatic application. Now, that's a little bit coincides with data loss prevention, and the relationship there is DLP policies can actually apply sensitivity labels. So there is a little bit of overlap. If you've already got sensitivity labels set up and you're looking to get DLP or looking for the relationship, it depends on the situation. So it allows editable labels so you can add classification and categorization to the information that's in your organization. So depending how stringent or strict you want to be with this, you may be able to set them up for highly confidential documents or set them up into different security levels, or however you want to do. You're able to pretty much customize these as you see fit for your organization. It may not be worthwhile having a highly confidential tag if the information you have is mostly public knowledge. But the ones that we have at the bottom are just some general labels that we see would probably fit in most circumstances. So, enforce protection on documents. Just like we saw with data loss prevention, allows you to take action on the documents depending on the label that's attached to them. So, ensuring that this can't be shared externally, ensuring that it can't be properly downloaded in third-party applications. It is what applies the action and protects the content. Now, this isn't necessary to put in place if you don't want to take any action and just take advantage of the usage reports that it can generate. You can leave these actions out. Okay. To our next point, protection in third-party applications using Cloud App Security. So Bart will go through Cloud App Security a little bit later, but the idea of sensitivity labels is that they're stored in clear plain text in the metadata of the document, which can be made use of in things like Salesforce and Dropbox if they support it. The idea is that using these in align with a properly set up Cloud App Security tenant with properly third-party or SaaS apps, you can ensure that this protection carries on to those applications as well. And finally, the 4 general content labels that we think would be most fitting to most organizations. Again, you can set these however you want. It may be wise for you to have one that splits your marketing and your HR from your first level support. You may want to split your senior leadership team with everyone else in the company. Now, there's no exact limit to how many you have these, so it just depends how you manage the information in the organization. Now, moving on, we mentioned a little bit earlier about the purpose of classifying data in the first place. It's a lot of work to have users add a little bit of extra information to every document. And it definitely would take a bit of buy-in for the users to understand the difference in the levels, the advantages of some labels over others, and why, as a whole, this is important. So if you're wondering that, one of the good advantages of putting in place classifications, such as sensitivity labels or data loss prevention, is to give you more in-depth reporting. By assigning sensitivity labels to all the documents in your organization, you're able to see specifically which labels are getting the most use. You may notice that you have more highly confidential documents in your organization than you thought. You may notice that you don't have any when you were expecting a lot. Either way, it's important to understand what information is being passed through your organization, what's being passed externally, and just in general have a better understanding of the data that you're dealing with. Next, the automated and manual remediation. So, as we said before, data loss prevention provides a bit of automated detection and prevention of accidentally or negligibly losing this data by sending it externally. Manual Remediation also allows IT compliance officers to understand and put in place the proper security access for higher confidential or differing levels of access to files. Which brings us to the next point of notifications to compliance officers, or to IT admins, or to anyone that you see fit. It may be worthwhile setting it up so that notifications are sent through to the team leader of each team if if a document is shared with another organization. Again, it depends who's in charge and who this information needs to get to. Now, as I said before, all security is essentially put in place to protect company data. A large portion of it is to ensure that the attackers don't have access to your systems, so they don't have access to the data that you're dealing with. What this does is adds an extra layer of security. Assuming the user's already been infiltrated, the device has been filled with malware, this adds another level for you to continue to secure and monitor the information in your organization. Finally, one which is probably up there with one of the most important reasons is if your organization has to meet compliance regulations or requirements. Commonly frequent in healthcare businesses, ensuring that patient or customer data isn't leaked outwardly. It's important to have these things in place to ensure that the information is being kept where it should be kept. So, go into the sort of recent updates and the new additions to data loss prevention and to sensitivity labels. First of all, data classification. So again, allowing you to ensure that this can be done to all the data, to put in the proper measures in place to ensure the data that you're using is being secured accurately. Labeling on iOS and Android and web Office applications continues to expand the landscape that your users can continue to operate and continue to assign these labels and ensure that the policies and the correct security is being applied to the correct documents. Data loss prevention for teams, as I mentioned earlier, allows for better security over the instant messaging app and ensure no one's accidentally sharing secrets through there.